Behaviorism is one among many schools of thoughts in psychology. It is a science of behavior introduced by John B. Watson, which dealt solely with observable behavioral acts that could be described in objective terms. Behaviorism was introduced to the public in 1930, the same year Watson published his most well-known article on behaviorism through a famous editor called Psychological Review. This school of thought received considerable acceptance and criticisms alike. It marked the official path of psychology as a science of practical value in real life.
The figure responsible for the establishment of behaviorism was no other than John B. Watson. Although he was recognized as the founder, Watson claimed that his role was merely that of the individual who crystallized the ideas that already emerged within psychology. Born on a farm near Greenville, South Carolina, Watson was raised by a very religious mother and an alcoholic father. As a child, Watson lived a hard life stuck with poverty, an abusive father, and contempt from his neighbors.
He enrolled at the Furman University in Greenville on his age at reached 16 years old and completed his master's degree there in 1899, the same year his mother passed away. He pursued further studies at the University of Chicago, where he became interested in psychology and stumbled upon the concept of mechanism. During those years, he suffered a lot of acute anxiety attacks and depression.
In 1903, Watson received a remarkable PhD at the young age of only 25 years old. He later proposed to Mary X, one of his students, and became happily married to her. In 1908, he accepted an offer to become a professor at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. During his 12 years there, Watson was appointed as the chair of the psychology department and editor of the influential Psychological Review, during which he published his famous article on behaviorism.
His most famous experiment was the conditioning done on little Albert. With the help of Rosalie Rayner, he conditioned the little Albert, who initially was not afraid of white rat, into developing fear towards it. He did so by pairing the rat with loud startling noise, making Albert cry whenever he heard the noise. After a few attempts, Albert cried whenever he saw a white rat, even without the accompaniment of the loud noise. He also developed a generalized fear of anything white and furry, for example, a white rabbit. Fortunately, the experiment has not been replicated to this day.
Watson's behavioral psychology dealt solely with observable behavioral acts that could be described in objective terms. Its primary subject matter was the elements of behavior, the body muscular movement, and glandular secretions. A response in his view could be as simple as a knee-jerk, but could be as more complex, to which he called as complex response, such as like writing, driving, or eating as the acts. They were considered complex because they were associated with accomplishing goals that affect one's environment.
Watson published a book, Behavior: An Introduction to Comparative Psychology, in 1914. In the book, he described the benefits of using animal subjects in psychological research, demonstrating his acceptance of animal psychology. His book received much support among young psychologists and likewise many criticisms by the older psychologists. 2 years after his article was published, Watson was elected as the president of APA.
Watson wanted behaviorism to be practical value, not only for laboratory use, but for the real world as well. He talked of human behaviors like that of machine, which is predictable and controllable. This ambition of his became reality to some extent when following his Little Albert study. Mary Carver Jones undertook a study with a 3-year-old Peter as her subject. Peter, as an infant, already showed fear towards rabbits. She conditioned him to arouse his fear of a rabbit by feeding him in the presence of a rabbit. At first, the rabbit was placed at a considerable distance away but was brought closer progressively, until he got used to it and was able to touch it. Any generalized fear was also eliminated. His study became precursor of behavior therapy. It was widely known to his colleagues that Watson did not excel in introspection.
He insisted that psychology must restrict itself to the data which could be observed only. The most objective methodologies acceptable in behaviorism were observation with or without instruments, testing methods, the verbal report method, and the conditioned reflex method. Nonetheless, his use of the verbal report method received quite a criticism from other psychologists. The conditioned reflex method was adopted by Watson in 1915, and he was largely responsible for its widespread use in American psychological research. He explained that response became conditioned when it became connected to a stimulus other than the one that originally aroused it. He broke this down into its elementary units known as the stimulus-response SR bonds. Besides, in contrast to Wundt and Titchener's psychology, the subjects became less important in behaviorism as they were no longer the observer, only being observed by the experimenters. This development reinforced psychology's image of people as machines.
Watson accepted the role of instincts, emotions, and thought processes in behavior, but soon changed his mind and eliminated the role of instincts, claiming that it was basically a socially conditioned response. He rejected all views that suggested inheritability of behavior, making him an extreme environmentalist. This went well with his claim that if he were given a dozen healthy infants, he could turn them into specialists in any profession despite their innate talents. Watson accepted the role of emotions as no more than physiological responses to specific stimuli. According to Watson, as an infant, humans have three fundamental unlearned emotional responses, which are fear, rage, and love. He also attempted to reduce thinking into merely implicit motor behavior.
He also severely criticized the child-rearing practices of the day, claiming that parents should never be affectionate to their children. He raised his children likewise, causing his sons to suffer from serious depression throughout their life. James Watson claimed that the only affection he could recall given by Watson to his sons was a brief hug when Rosalie died in 1935. During his later years, Watson experienced periodic depression and even thought of suicide. After Rosalie passed away, he became a recluse. APA awarded his work and contributions in psychology in 1957. Before he passed away, Watson burned all of his letters, manuscripts, and notes that haven't been published, refusing to pass them on to the history.
Watson's behaviorism was really radical as it proposed sweeping revisions of the existing order which suggested the earlier version of the truth to be discarded. Hence, it was heavily criticized. Many psychologists believed that his behaviorism omitted many vital components such as sensory and perceptual processes. Among the loudest voices were Carl Lashley, one of his former students, and William McDougall, who was known for his instinct theory for behavior. Apart from that, Watson's inconsistent use of the verbal report method also came under fire.
Despite all criticisms, his behaviorism contributed largely not only to American psychology but in general scientific attitudes as well. Watson made psychology more objective in terms of methods and terminology. His influence was so big that he eclipsed Wundt and Titchener's names. Although behaviorism was replaced by other forms of psychological objectivisms that came later on, all those new forms built on his initial ideas. Islam has partial acceptance of Watson's behaviorism. It is because behaviorism views human behaviors as machines. This contradicts Islamic views as it denies the existence of soul and mind. In Islam, the shaping of soul through religious practices such as prayer plays an important role in shaping one's behaviors. If human behaviors can be controlled like machines, then humans cannot be held accountable for their actions. This is an atheistic way of thinking, as Islam believes in the Day of Judgment. Nonetheless, Islam accepts the applications of behaviorism as they prove to be useful in human learning.